Hi, I'm Magdalena Kaiser, the Director of Public Relations for VQA Wines of Ontario, also providing education and knowledge resource on behalf of the industry. I'm excited here today to be introducing the VQA Gamay Noir 1.0 session, which is part of a series of 10 webinars that we've put together especially for the LCBO staff. As you can see, we're featuring 5 varieties in 10 sessions, and hopefully you've already seen Chardonnay, Riesling, and Pinot Noir, and this will be your 4th session, Gamay Noir 1.0. And coming up after this is Cabernet Franc 1.0. And then as part of an extension of these series, we also have a 2.0 version, which goes into a little bit more depth about the sub-appellations and soils. In each session, you will be able to discover key flavor characteristics, really fun wine pairings and food pairings, and meet the makers from wines and wineries as part of this session. Again, I'm excited to welcome back Peter Rod, and I never get tired of welcoming him back. He's extremely knowledgeable, one of Canada's best, and he will be interviewing 5 today, 5 producers from Ontario, and having them talk about their Gamay and some of their favorite food and Gamay pairings. So Peter, please let's get started.
Thank you, Magdalena. Happy to be back. Welcome, gentlemen. We'll get to you very shortly. Just want to do a short introduction to our grape variety today, Gamay Noir. And we'll kick things off with, as we like to do, to get you all inspired. You know, the day that you're watching this, it may not be quite as sunny and blue, but you can always be reminded that we have this weather much of the growing season, and that's why one of the reasons we produce such fantastic fruit in Ontario VQA wines. All right, so we won't go into too many details on the first few slides because I think you're all becoming very familiar with. I'm hoping, as Magdalena says, that this is not your first session. And even if it is your first session, I'm pretty sure you know the story of the primary growing appellations of Ontario. That is to say, specifically Prince Edward County on the North Shore of Lake Ontario, Niagara Peninsula, of course, that's nestled between the South Shore of Lake Ontario and the North Shore, although somewhat distant from the North Shore of Lake Erie. And then we have Lake Erie North Shore to the west and south as we approach Windsor, including Pelee Island or the South Islands appellation. Speaking of South Islands appellation, it's one of 11 sub-appellations we have in Ontario, as you know. We've summarized them again for you here. I always encourage you to read these over as we delve deeper into the session to give you a sense of place and a sense of the differences that exist between each of these sub-appellations. Our winemakers and our winery representatives today may mention that some of the fruit is sourced from one or more of these sub-appellations. And if you can connect the terroir story as you see it here, the story of soils and mesoclimates, et cetera, to the style of wine that you have in your glass, then you get a more accurate picture of or a complete story of the wine, as it were, to help you along in your sales efforts. Depending on the customer, some people like to know a little more of this part of the story. Others prefer a more of a simple introduction to the wine, the winery, food matches, etc. We're going to try to cover all that off for you. We do from time to time encounter single vineyard Gamay Noirs in Ontario as well. As the grape variety becomes more and more popular, as the vines get older and older, and as the wineries that specialize in this grape variety become more and more knowledgeable about its nuances, how it changes from vintage to vintage, et cetera, I think we'll see the emergence of more single vineyard designated Gamay Noirs. But for now, that is not something perhaps quite as common as we expect from Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Riesling. The story is the same. Guess what? Here we are in the Ontario wine growing regions, and we're lucky to be here. I won't go into the detail of the science again, because I think you are all very comfortable with this idea of 41 to 40 degrees, 44 degrees north of the equator and how beneficial that is from a growing season standpoint, a true sort of continental climate that gives us 4 distinct growing seasons, pardon me, one of which is the bulk of the growing takes place in the summer, obviously. And depending on the grape variety, we may see some early physiological activity in the vine in the spring. And of course, we count on that long hang time that we get in Ontario to ripen some of our later varieties. The lakes, as you know, the very dramatic lake effect, the cooling and heating impacts that the vineyards experience, the airflow, the natural airflow that comes off the water, and in the case of Niagara Peninsula, rebounds against the escarpment and flows back over. That perpetual air movement is very beneficial to mitigating frost and to help ripening. And because all of the regions are proximal to a large body of water, all 3 of the primary regions benefit from that large body of water in some form or another. Interestingly, although we've been touting the benefits of limestone as our primary subsoil and part of our topsoil in our previous sessions, it plays a little less of a role with Gamay Noir. Historically, Gamay Noir is not necessarily associated with limestone. Now, having said that, Gamay Noir is not necessarily associated with one particular soil type like some varieties prefer to be in a particular soil type, seem to express their highest quality level in a particular distinctive soil type. Gamay is actually quite a friendly little fellow and a versatile variety that will grow and express itself differently in a number of different soil types. Not unlike Chardonnay, where you can produce it in clay and in stonier soils and in finer, sandier soils and get very fine Chardonnay, but with a different expression. Gamay is not unlike that. So we can associate it with sandier soils. We can produce firmer versions of it in clay soils. We obviously can take advantage of the terroir influence and the mineral character in some of our stonier soils in the Ontario wine growing regions. And the beauty of that is that's part of the diverse expression that we have of Gamay and that growing diversity that's growing with the varietals growing success and exposure to the market. So what about Gamay specifically? Well, Gamay is, I guess, lived historically in the shadow of Pinot Noir. They are cousins, both probably historically most famous in the central eastern part of France, in Burgundy for Pinot Noir, and to the south in Beaujolais for Gamay Noir. And to be honest with you, if you travel outside of France, there really aren't too many other regions of the world that are making Gamay Noir their sort of raison d'etre or their primary variety. There's certainly plantings of it in places like Switzerland, in Oregon, in the United States, in parts of New Zealand. But in none of those places does it really kind of stand out as a primary variety for that particular place. And I think that's where the opportunity for Ontario is and continues to grow. It's as we say here, the next big thing in Ontario. And there's an awful lot of winemakers who have known this for a couple of decades or more, some of whom we have with us today. But there are a lot of others who are joining the party. And like we've seen extreme growth in our sparkling wine industry, we're also seeing some really exciting things happening with Gamay. And that makes me very excited because when I think of Gamay, I think it's probably my go-to red varietal. If I'm looking for a glass of red wine and I don't want to overthink the choice, and I want it to be a choice that goes with whatever I'm eating, frankly, whether it's grilled salmon or it's a whitefish like turbot or Lake Erie pickerel that I've poached maybe in some stock with some mushrooms, a little bit of cream, or it's something meaty, whether it's pork or poultry, whether it's stew or it's grilled. Gamay just has this food friendliness that allows it to go with so many different dishes. And that makes it just a really easy choice. Now, that's not to diminish the potential quality of Gamay. Gamay can be a very serious wine, a very complex wine, but it just has that gulpability, very high on the gulpability factor, the drinkability scale. And that's part of the reason I think I drink so much of it. I really do adore all of that. Aromatically, plenty to smell. We encourage you to drink it out of the larger bowls. Recommend that your guests and your customers drink it out of larger glass bowls to allow all of these perfumes of red fruits and spice and earth and herb and animal and all manner of, and wood in some cases, although not necessarily associated with oak too much. Those oaked versions do in fact express their own unique characteristics as well. So set your Gamay free and put it in a nice big glass. I would also encourage you, like I do with Pinot, to inform your guests that Gamay, because of its vibrant fruit, its fresh acidity, its juiciness, and its drinkability, that you can enhance those characteristics by chilling it very lightly in the refrigerator, or even just setting it on top of a bit of ice for 15 minutes. It doesn't need to be plunged in ice, and you certainly don't want it in the fridge for more than 10, 15 minutes, just to give it that light coolness to the touch. That will enhance the fruitiness and enhance the acidity, and that's really what makes Gamay so beautiful. So we have plenty of dry table wines from Gamay in this part of the world, typically made in a dry style, most often unoaked, although there are oaked versions as well. Judiciously oaked, and that is to say lightly oaked in most cases. We don't want oak to be the dominant characteristic. We're seeing some really gorgeous rosé wines from Gamay as well. And it's being used in sparkling wines now. Another unique utilization of this very talented grape variety. And some of the early results that I've tried, and many of you have tried, I'm sure, are very, very promising, if not excellent already. So we may have an important growth in that segment as well, the sparkling wines made from Gamay. So we've talked a little bit about the food, the range of wine, the styles of Gamay allow us to really kind of cater to different dishes. As we can go through the specifics. They're all listed here for you, or some examples are listed here for you. But the fact is that don't overthink it. When your guests ask, why should I order a bottle of Gamay? Why should I buy a bottle or a case of Gamay? One of your first answers can be because it goes with so many foods, that it just is really, it's a friendly wine that's a crowd-pleasing style. It goes with pretty much anything that you're cooking or takeout. It can be a serious wine, but it doesn't start off as a serious wine. And so we might think of simple dishes, simple snacks, appetizers, salads. I guess the other part I love about Gamay Noir is its affinity to the fish side of the spectrum, that we can have red wine with fish, because the tannins in Gamay tend not to be overly strong or even present in some versions. And tannin is the element of red wine that typically conflicts or clashes with some of the flavors of fish and the oils in fish. So grill your salmon, wrap your cod with a little bit of prosciutto or bacon, add some mushrooms, add some spices, add some herbs from your garden, whether it's sage or it's parsley or it's another herb that you're very fond of. Any of those range of flavors is going to go extremely well with your Gamay. Because sometimes wine doesn't have to be a grand flavor beside the food. Sometimes the wine can simply be the palate cleanser. The flavors of the food are shining. You take a sip of the wine, there's a meshing of flavors, and the palate is clean and refreshed, and the next mouthful of food tastes just as good. And Gamay does an exceptional job of that because of its lovely acidity. You're going to get asked a lot for recommendations for Thanksgiving dinner, and if you're looking at a sort of traditional Thanksgiving dinner that may include roasted ham, turkey, all the fixins, Gamay is an excellent pairing with that, especially the very fruity, even slightly delicately sweet versions pair very well with that range, including the sometimes difficult to pair cranberry sauce. Gamay and cheese. Well, if you know anything about France, you know that's a country that makes a lot of cheese. And if you know anything about food in Canada, we are also a country that celebrates cheese and makes a huge, huge range of different varieties. They tend to go hand in hand. Gamay and cheese are very happy. Whether it's goat cheese, goat milk cheese, like the Nanny Noir that we see here from Upper Canada, or sheep's milk or cow's milk cheeses, some that are maybe a little bit firmer and drier, like a Gruyere or a Beamster style cheese, which has that caramelly, butterscotchy intensity. The fruitiness of Gamay is beautiful. Some of our Tom style or dry aged cheeses, like the Guns Hill Hand Deck, excellent as well. And then even the simplest cheeses like Boursin or the Great Lakes Urban Garlic Goat Cheddar, and frankly, even fresh cheeses like fresh ricotta or mascarpone, if you're using that in a dish. Gamay is happy with them all. So it's really not hard, this one. It makes life easy for us, Gamay Noir. So hopefully that little introduction gets you salivating and ready, and maybe even pausing the presentation and running to your local cheese shop so you can nibble on some cheese while we hear about the wines from our 5 esteemed winery representatives. Let's kick things off with Château de Charme. And we have had the pleasure of Paul joining us for a previous session. And I'm quite certain you're all very familiar with this grand estate, one of our grandest chateau wineries in Ontario. So without further ado, let's jump straight to Paul and ask him to tell us all about his delicious and historic Gamay Noir. Paul, welcome.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Peter. Geez, where do I start with this grape? We have a long history with it, and this wine, LCBO number 57349, has been on the LCBO's general list since the early 80s, which was a point I made about our Chardonnay the last time for Chardonnay 1.0, but the same point applies to our Gamay Noir, almost a 40-year continuous run on the LCBO's general list, and there are not too many VQA wines that can say that. Matter of fact, this was listed years and years before the VQA appellation system actually existed. But before that, my family's relationship with Gamay actually goes back to the 1950s, when my father was a student at the University of Burgundy in Dijon, and he was exposed to Gamay, being the red grape of the Beaujolais, or the southern part of Burgundy. And fast forward to the late 1970s. By that time, we had been in Canada for about 15 years. He started planting our original vineyard, the Creek Road Vineyard. And there was no doubt in his mind that he needed to import Gamay Noir from nurseries in Beaujolais. He just felt that our climate would support it. And at the time, the point that you made, Peter, you haven't seen Gamay establish itself in too many regions in the world outside of Beaujolais. And that statement was especially true more than 40 years ago. And we certainly had the first commercial plantings of this variety in all of Canada, and we've stuck with it. Those original plantings in our Creek Road Vineyard are no longer there. We replanted, and as a matter of fact, we should be picking Gamay, I'd say in the next 3 weeks or so, give or take. And we have a new block at the original farm, Creek Road Vineyard, that was a replant from a few years ago. And we had a tiny crop last year, which technically was the first crop. But this year will be truly the first crop from that new planting. So we've rejuvenated the Gamay from the original Creek Road vineyard. We today planted Gamay in 2 of our 4 vineyards. The aforementioned Creek Road vineyard in the 4 Mile Creek sub-appellation, but also on our St. David's Bench vineyard, which the sub-appellation is actually named after that vineyard. It's the St. David's Bench sub-appellation, where we also grow our single clone Gamay, the Gamay Noir. And the wine that we're tasting today has a little bit of single clone Gamay into it. It's predominantly the traditional, Gamay clone, augmented or amplified with the single clone Gamay. Because the wine comes from 2 vineyards and 2 distinct sub-appellations, I don't know if you can see the label here, but it carries the VQA Niagara-on-the-Lake sub-appellation, which is one of the 2 collective sub-appellations, VQA Niagara-on-the-Lake. The wine has been on the street for many, many decades. That's true, but distribution has never been better. I just checked this morning, and it's in 288 LCBOs and a few grocery stores, and so it's not on every street corner, but it's pretty well distributed, and I think that speaks to one of the many, many good points that Peter made about rising interest in Gamay. That has certainly been our experience over the last few years. A little bit about the winemaking. Most of our red wines see aging in 100% French oak, but this is an exception. This is fermented and aged in stainless steel, and we really want the natural flavors of Gamay to come through. This is a red wine that, in our opinion, well, I'll use Peter's word. What's very important with Gamay is gulpability, and a good way to achieve gulpability is by non-oaking it. Another very good way to achieve that is, as Peter said, to serve it slightly chilled. I can't think of a red wine that's better suited to that, especially when it's warm. You can keep it very simple in terms of food pairing, tomato-based pastas, lighter grilled dishes. I like to grill well-seasoned chicken breasts and serve them on baguette as a sandwich, and then a little bit of camembert in there, or brie style cheese, a soft cheese, and make a sandwich out of it, and serve this wine, Gamay Noir, slightly chilled, very much almost like bistro food. And I think that's what I have to say today about Gamay. What can I say? It's my family's love affair with this grape spans two generations, and I'll second Peter's remarks that things are very much on the rise. Every dog has his day, it seems, and Gamay has never been more popular, and I'm particularly pleased to see some of my neighbors taking this variety very, very seriously, with single vineyard bottlings. We've been producing a single vineyard version of Gamay with our Gamay Noir since the 1999 vintage, and we're absolutely committed to that. So the future is very, very rosy for the little red grape from the Beaujolais that has found a second home here in Niagara, no question about it.
Good for you. The little red grape that could and does, and aren't we happy that it does? Paul, thanks to you and your family for getting things kickstarted. You've been an inspiration to a lot of growers who saw you committed to this variety and have great success with it. And I'm sure that convinced a lot of them that it was a safe next step. And the results, as you say, are the situation's very rosy. Not rosé exclusively, but rosy. Paul, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next, let's move to AJ McLaughlin, who is speaking on behalf of Angels Gate Winery. And AJ, you've been there a few years. We've known each other for quite a number of years, and I've always associated you with this fine estate. I'm sure you know this, the Gamay story as well as anybody. Tell us about the wine that we have in front of us today, the 2019.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again. Appreciate the opportunity to be here, of course. Yeah, for me, it's 25 years in the VQA wine business, so I'm pretty excited. Most of those have been here with Angels Gate. We did have some good news out of the camp. If I could start with that, of course, is we had some good news last week from the Ontario Wine Awards that Philip Dowell, our winemaker, has won Winemaker of the Year this year. So I think it's very well deserved. He's a very humble and quiet guy, a phenomenal winemaker with a lifetime of experience. And we are certainly pleased to be able to have him here with us. It's also our 20th vintage this year, which is kind of cool. And the guys actually are out back working today, believe it or not, because harvest, of course, is a 24-hour job this time of year. For those of you that don't know, Angels Gate is situated in the Beamsville Bench. We are on a 25-acre property that was once owned and operated by a Christian sisterhood. But that's not today's focus. Today I want to talk a bit more about our Gamay specific. And I think a lot of the key points around Gamay have been sort of echoed as far as I love Gamay chilled. We chill it here at the winery for our guests when they come to visit. Definitely is an underdog varietal. There's no doubt about that. We also consider it a little bit of a crossover varietal. And what I mean by that is I think it's a great wine for those that are beginning to move down the road of reds as sort of their adventure, and they are a little hesitant. They can move into Gamay because it has a lot in common with white wine. The acidity, the very low tannin, the nice fruit expression. So I think that makes a little bit of difference for a lot of people. The side note to that is, despite all that, I think it is a wine that can still be extremely complex. And I think that's what I'm drawn personally to Gamay, is I always like an underdog. I think most people probably do, but I like that complexity. I like the fact that the fruit expresses itself often with very little barrel influence. You get a lot of the vineyard character in there, and people sort of, they move away from those kinds of varietals for, bigger, fuller bodied, Cabernet Sauvignon, this or that. And poor Gamay kind of gets put off to the side, but it is a varietal that I think brings a lot to the table. Certainly there's the food component, which I think you've already mentioned, the poultry side, the turkeys, the hams, you name it. For us, it's a pizza wine, it's a grilled sausage wine, but then I'm not afraid to have a dish with a lot of different flavors in it and put it up with next to a Gamay as well. I'm certainly not afraid. It's not too light, doesn't have to be too fruity. You can do a lot of different things with it. Our example, the 2019, if you've got a keen eye, you noticed in the blend that it is 90% Gamay and there's 10% Dornfelder. And for those of you that don't know what Dornfelder is, don't worry about it, because you're really not going to find it anywhere else. There are not a lot of fantastic things for me to say about it, other than it is like black ink. The color of Dornfelder is unbelievable. And in our instance, we use a little bit of it, not to add any extra character or flavor to the wine, but really just to darken the color just a little bit for us. And that small amount of Dornfelder accomplishes that without taking away any of the great characteristics of the Gamay itself. It is Niagara Peninsula fruit. It's almost all estate fruit. There's a little bit of fruit that we buy from a grower we've been dealing with for 15 years. We really like the style of Gamay that he has growing in his vineyard, so we use it as part of our blend. Pretty much all stainless steel. We do oak age a portion of it in some older 500-liter puncheons, so large size barrels. And it sits there for 3 or 4 months roughly, and then ends up in the final blend. That's not to add any oaky, smoky, toasty, vanilla-y, none of that. It's really about texture. and just gives a little bit of extra texture in the palate that we really enjoy. And that, coupled with the classic sort of cherry raspberry thing that happens, you end up with, I think, a wine that again can be used in multiple occasions. So really, for me, Gamay is all about great value, because I think you'll find all the ones in today's lineup offer great value. We grow it really well here in Niagara, in my case. Obviously, well in other parts of Ontario as well. It is unique, and I think that makes it exciting too. So if you really need the next wine to bring to your friend's house to impress them, look for Gamay and bring Gamay, because they're not really going to see it from anywhere else, other than, you know, the couple places that have already been mentioned. And I think we can own it to a certain degree, in that we do a great job of it very consistently every year. So I hope you had enjoyed tasting it, Peter, and I hope everybody gets a chance to try it, and you know, tell people about the great things that Gamay has to offer their customers at the LCBO.
Yeah, I am enjoying it. Surprisingly, there's still a little bit left in the glass, but we have a lot of wine to get through today. So that's, if I've learned one thing in this business after 35 years, it's to not drink everything that's put in front of you, or not all of it at least. It's gorgeous.
Absolutely.
You know, and you know, you downplay the Dornfelder part, but you certainly accomplished that light enhancement of color. There's a beautiful, rich ruby, very attractive. And there are some lovely nuances on the palate that I'm sure are coming from Dornfelder, whether on purpose or not, but they're all positive. You know, there's an element of structure there that just a slight boost to the intensity, maybe a little bit darker fruit to complement all of that lovely red fruit. Some nice peppery notes, which are also very common in Gamay as well. So
absolutely. Yeah, it's all about harmony.
Absolutely. And you know, the other thing you bring up, AJ, which I'm glad you mentioned, is yes, these are great value wines, but when you look at the full spectrum of Gamay, from its entry-level price points in Ontario, which are very, very near what we see in front of us now, to the absolute upper echelons of single vineyard, old vines, top reserve stuff, we're really only looking at about a $15 difference from the entry to the top, from $15 to $30. And there are very few grape varieties on the planet can claim that can say our very best is still within reach, is still affordable, and you get much more than you pay for, regardless of what price point you're at. So
absolutely, yeah, great value doesn't equal lowest price. Great value is in relationship to the wine, and I think dollar for dollar at all of the price points that you'll get VQA Gamay, we punch well above our weight.
Amen to that. Well done. Thanks, AJ.
Thank you.
So next we are moving to Lakeview Wine Company Diamond Estates, which of course is a wonderful collaboration with a number of different wineries, many of that we're all quite familiar with. Scott is here, Scott McGregor is here to shed a little light on the story of East Dell and Lakeview and Diamond and how they fit together. Certainly we know there's great history there. I'm old enough and fortunate enough to remember the great wines of Eddie Gorinskas in the very early Lakeview days, and still once in a while run across old vintages of some of the wines that Eddie and his team made, and they're as magnificent today as they were then. But we've moved to 2020, and we have with us the 2017 East Dell Gamay. I know that I have the 2016 behind me. There's a little bit left of that in the LCBO, but Scott, you've suggested that the 2017 is what most of our LCBO staff are going to see now, right?
Yes, yeah, there should be a little bit of 16 that's still kind of moving through the system, but the 17 will be on shelves in places and will be out very soon. So thanks a lot for having me. I'm really excited to be involved in the Gamay session here. Gamay again, and I'm loving hearing how much everybody really likes Gamay Noir. Gamay Noir is actually one of my favorite wines, and I find it interesting that a lot of winemakers that I'm speaking to, it is a very similar thing. The assistant winemaker here, Jessica Wallace, her and I, we discuss Gamay Noir a lot, and we will sit and have a glass. So it is just one of those wines that if people really know about it and they've tried it and they're open to it, you can really find some interesting wines there. So a little background to the company, Diamond Estates, as I would assume most people in the LCBO know, we've got quite a few brands under our umbrella, and quite a few of them are involved in the LCBO. So here we're speaking about the Eastdale brand, and you spoke earlier about Lakeview Cellars. We kind of came together back in 2005, and then the company kind of grew from there, and we've added in and rolled in multiple other brands to the portfolio as we've gone. Serenity Wines is one of our new sort of add-ons to the Lakeview series. And some of the other wines that we know in the LCBO would be 20 B's, Fresh Wines, and Dan Aykroyd Wines also. Gamay Noir, this Gamay Noir right here in 2017, this was a mix of 3 different vineyards. It is from PGN's farms in 4 Mile Creek appellation, and also Traguno Farms, which is on the Niagara River appellation. And then there's a small amount that comes from our property right here at Lakeview Wine Co. All of these vineyards have been had their crop loads reduced just to kind of maintain Gamay. Is one thing that we've noticed, especially with our vineyard here on the property, is that it tends to fruit quite heavily. So we've been making sure that we're trying to reduce that crop load back just to allow and make sure that we've got good full ripeness. And funnily enough, this year, because of the summer that we've had so far, the ripeness has come along quite well. We've just actually looked at some field samples the other day, and Gamay is coming along. I would agree with Paul's comment that for sure within the next probably couple of weeks, we will see some Gamay starting to be picked. The harvest this year actually is coming along quite well. We're going, as soon as I get off of this call, I'll be receiving some grapes this afternoon. So harvest is well in motion here in the Niagara Peninsula. So just to get a little rough idea of how we make this wine from a vinification standpoint, Gamay Noir is brought in, fermentation is started. We try to do light pump overs, so we're nothing too agitated. We don't want too heavily or too high levels of tannin, as been alluded to. This wine really shows nicely when it has a nice softness and a nice roundness to it. So we try to keep pump overs light, not too long, twice a day. And at the same time, we will have co-inoculation of malolactic fermentation. So we'll put the wine through malo at the same time, piggyback on the warmth of the fermentation to be able to finish that malolactic fermentation. And we usually keep the wine on the skins for in and around 3 weeks. Nowhere, not too much more. We don't want to build up again those tannins too much. This wine also, how it's been described here, I couldn't agree more with Paul and with AJ. This wine, just a little coolness when it's being tasted, it really brings the wine out, and it's a wine that is really growing in popularity. And I think that ability to have the wine not be too heavy, not be too harsh, and I agree with you, Peter, that this wine really matches with foods really well. It is not something that is a big, strong wine. You might want to watch any foods that have any real harsh flavors, really strong. It might overtake the wine a little bit, but lighter foods, it matches really well. And another thing that this wine matches really well with is just being sipped on its own. This is a perfect summertime sitting on the dock at the cottage. To me, Gamay Noir really matches well with barbecues and nice weather outside, having the bottle chilled just slightly, not too much that it'll overtake or make it too cold so that you can't get the flavors, but just at that right point where it kind of makes the wine come along quite nicely. One thing that is coming up on the horizon that Gamay Noir matches wonderfully with is Thanksgiving dinners. Something that has a little bit of cranberry sauce in there with a little bit of turkey, or one of my personal favorites is pork tenderloin with a little bit of cranberry, just to kind of tie those berry notes together, because the Gamay really does have a wonderful fruit that comes out of it and a wonderful berry notes and things like that.
Yeah.
We do oak age our Gamays, but we'll oak age them in older barrels, French and Hungarian, but they're what would be considered a neutral barrel, so it's not really imparting a lot of oak, but it is helping to sort of soften and structure the wine to make sure that that we're able to kind of be respectful for those flavors, but to just sort of help bring the wine along. Anything too strong on the oak standpoint would overpower with Gamay. That's really the main things that I had to talk about. Again, this has been a general list in the LCBO for quite some time now. Excellent value, and has done very, very well for the Eastel brand.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Scott, very much. As the label suggests, this is a brand and a varietal that's taking off, right?
Agreed.
Appropriately labeled in that respect. Thanks for joining us and for giving some insight into the Eastel Gamay Noir.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to speak with Gabe DeMarco, winemaker at Cave Spring Vineyard. And you might know Cave Spring as a grand Riesling house, a great Chardonnay house, an excellent Pinot Noir house, et cetera, but they've also been producing Gamay for quite a number of years as well. And here we have yet another wonderful expression of the grape. Gabe, can you tell us about your 2018 Gamay Noir, please?
Absolutely, thank you again. Yeah, so since we've done this, I've been fortunate to be at a few of these sessions and talked about the history of Cave Spring a lot. Just to get to the fact that Cave Spring has kind of built its foundation, like we all know of it, as building its foundation with Riesling and Chardonnay. But from the beginning, we've had Gamay in the ground, and it's something that we've always focused on as kind of one of the core varieties. And it's quite exciting to see now, as my esteemed peers have mentioned, that it's catching on. People are kind of catching on. One of the things I like most about these talks is not only are we talking about how we do grapes, why we can do grapes here, but like in any region in the world, once you identify a viticultural zone, all these regions in the world, they work with specific varieties. And so identifying those varieties for Ontario has been very exciting because now we know what works and what it can be exceptional in every vintage. And Gamay is definitely one of those varieties. And so this Gamay, it comes from two estate blocks that are about, they're separated by a ravine on the Beamsville Bench in our estate vineyards. It is, the vine age in those two blocks is 25 years. And so we bring that into the winery, and we treat our Gamay more like a Pinot Noir. And I don't want to say, but it's, I think, a positive thing. No new oak in our Pinot or in our Gamay, 100% barrel aged in neutral oak. To really gain that supple fruit, that nice juicy mouthfeel, we gravity 30% of this wine down to barrel just at the end of fermentation to really kind of get those smoky notes from the finishing of ferment and barrel. And then when we press off the rest of the wine, we integrate back and kind of and then we end up with this wine that has this supple tannin, the juicy mouthfeel, and that nice precision on the finish. So you get that nice live acidity of the Gamay. We like to think of this as a great value wine, as everyone's mentioned, not only because of the fact that Gamay over delivers in Ontario, but also because it comes from such established blocks on the Beamsville Bench and kind of with a full neutral oak age profile to give you that supple texture and mouthfeel. This wine does do great, like the other winemakers have mentioned, with a slight chill. It does well at red wine temperature as well, but I love this wine with grilled portobello mushrooms or grilled veg with a nice piece of grilled meat if you eat meat, or if not, just grill a bunch of vegetables, and this wine will deliver. The goal with this is a riper, supple wine that doesn't lose the delicacy or the delicate nature of Gamay, and kind of sticking with tradition with this wine.
Absolutely delicious, Gabe. I'm really, really enjoying it now. It's been in my glass for about an hour. It was delicious when I first nosed it, and it's going through changes. And for me, the sign of a great wine is one that has many chapters. And you might pour a glass of this wine and get an initial impression, but as that wine sits in your glass and you pour a little more from the bottle, you see all the chapters of the book unfolding. And this really is it's taking on this most beautiful Middle Eastern, North African spice character now, which is just gorgeous. And it's got me thinking about a whole bunch of foods that I want to cook now. And you got me thinking of veg, but you know, the Lebanese and much of the Middle Eastern cuisine does such a great job of beans and eggplant and various other vegetables. We may have another match made in heaven there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm at a Lebanese restaurant. Guess what I'm bringing with me?
Absolutely.
We're ordering off the menu. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Really delicious. Loving that one.
Oh, thank you.
Let's move on to our last presenter.
Cheers.
With us from cheers to you. With us from 13th Street Winery is Elia Rubin. And what can we say about 13th Street? Certainly there's no surprise that 13th Street is on this call to talk about Gamay, because when we think of wineries in Ontario that have specialized in this grape variety, there are only a few that can rise to the very top of the heap. And how does one sort of determine how serious a winery is about Gamay? Well, just look at the number of bottles, SKUs produced by 13th Street that incorporate in some way or another the Gamay Noir grape, from this beautiful blend that we've got to taste today, the burger blend, all the way up to the top single vineyard wines that they're producing, and even great sparkling wines from Gamay. So we're very, very happy that we have a representative from 13th Street. Elia, welcome, and look forward to hearing what you have to say about this delicious 2018 burger blend. Do we have Elia? Okay, there he is. Okay, we see Elia, but we don't hear him, and I'm not very good at reading.
How about now?
Yes, fantastic.
Okay.
You
Mute
were,
unmute twice. Apologies with the Zoom. So yeah, thanks so much for inviting me to the Gamay Lovin', and I'm glad you can hear me. 13th Street has been around since 1998, and Gamay has always been a really important part of our portfolio. We actually have 5 single varietal wines made from Gamay, 3 reds, traditional method sparkling, and a very, very light rosé, as well as this traditional Burgundian blend of Gamay and Pinot Noir. I mean, it's something that's been going on for hundreds of years just because of the sheer gulpability, if I can steal a quote from you, Peter. I wanted to quote one of the owners of the winery, Doug Whitty, who he likes to refer to Gamay as the heartwarming variety. Pinot Noir is known as the heartbreak variety. Gamay is certainly a pleasure to grow. It's a pleasure to make, and ultimately, the most important thing, it's a pleasure to drink. And that's our objective when we make all of our Gamays, and definitely for Burger Blend. So situating 13th Street, we're in the Creek Shores sub-appellation. We're about halfway between Lake Ontario and the foot of the escarpment in Short Hills Bench. The Creek Shores sub-appellation is full of different aspects, which we love. As the glaciers receded, it sort of pulled apart different creeks in the land. The winery is it's a partnership of 2 families, the Manns and the Whittys. The Whittys have been farming in Niagara since 1908. Doug, the president, is 3rd generation, and now Doug and Karen's kids are joining the family business as well, so a 4th generation, which is pretty exciting. Our winemaker, Jean-Pierre Collat, is originally from Chablis, and he's worked in Chile, Argentina, a little bit in Beaujolais before he came to Niagara and joined 13th Street in 2008. We have 2 vintages essentials and a couple of generalist wines. We have our single varietal Gamay in the essentials program, which is relatively new and doing quite well. And Jean-Pierre will be presenting that in the Gamay 2.0 in one of the next sessions. But specifically, I wanted to talk a little bit about Burger Blend and our objective when we made this wine. We wanted to make a fun, easy drinking wine that really was fit for any occasion. Yes, it absolutely has to go with burgers, but we thought of this burger blend. You would have a burger any night of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you could have a bottle of Burger Blend any of those nights as well. So we, actually you were there, Peter, when we came up with the first iteration of this blend. I believe we put out every possible condiment that could go with a burger. and paired and wanted to make sure that this wine went with all of those condiments. And it was actually a difficult chore because when you think about all the condiments, there's sweetness, there's acidity, there's bright flavors, and to pair with all those, not all wines would work. So we really needed a wine with really great fruit, punchy acidity, and just a little bit of sweetness. And you know, just making that wine ultimately led to where we are today. We blended about, it changes per vintage. This vintage is about 72% Gamay, about 25% Pinot Noir, and then we add in a little bit of Merlot as well. We found the Merlot just sort of fills in the mid palate just a little bit, and the Pinot and the Gamay really over deliver with that fruit and that acid, and really wines that are fun to drink. The Burger Blend brand has been super successful in the LCBO. People love it, they remember it, they think of it as fun, and as I'm sure everybody's watching this knows, we have a Burger Blend white as well, a Riesling Pinot Grigio, same sort of objective, fun, easy drinking, and also a Burger Blend Rosé. And yeah, I mean, the Burger Blend Red really delivers what everyone's been talking about today. We just want sheer drinkability, a really great price, and a really good impression of, I think, what Niagara and Ontario is able to deliver.
Yeah, and well, you've done it, and you've been doing it for a long time. A personal favorite of mine, as you know, and I've had the privilege of buying this for quite a number of years in all its iterations and sticking a little down. In fact, I used to buy cases of this for my mother, who lives up in the Ottawa Valley, when she was running dry. And it's not that she drank a whole lot of wine, but every time I visited her, I need to have wine to drink. And, you know, some of those bottles would sit for quite a number of years. And while we're not encouraging people necessarily to make the first point of Gamay to buy it and cellar it, don't be afraid actually to buy a little bit more than you would normally buy, perhaps. Drink a bunch of it and watch how it evolves beautifully in the bottle, because every single bottle I've opened, some as old as 8 years old, are still shining and still telling a beautiful story and a slightly different story with some tertiary characteristics. But the Gamay never seems to lose its fruitiness, its juiciness, its drinkability. And I'm hearing gulpability over and over said to me by all of you guys. And I'm wondering if maybe we need to find a new word, because it sounds too much like culpability. And the last thing we need is to be responsible for something that we did wrong. Anyway, Elia, thanks for joining us and for showing us that Gamay blends are also a really exciting opportunity for enjoyment in Ontario wines.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, Magdalena, that's my part. Enjoyed talking to these guys. Always do. Love tasting the Gamays, and I'll pass it over to you to take us home.
Thank you very much, Peter. Another wonderful session. And while, of course, it's hard to talk about favorites, I will say that Gamay Noir has a special place in my heart. And everything that has been said today about its versatility, its value proposition, all of those things have been said. So it's really exciting, and lots of history and knowledge. And the exciting thing that I've been seeing since over the last 5-10 years is that more wineries are making it as a single variety, also using it sometimes in blends. But so there is growth, and people are planting more of it. So it's a great variety for us in Ontario. So thank you again, Peter. Another wonderful session. Also, thank you to all of the producers again today for sharing your stories. And another thank you to the LCBO staff for all of you tuning in again today. Your education, knowledge, and service is again so important to us always in the industry, and we hope that you become passionate about some of these varieties that we do so well in Ontario. Again, we want to always remember and remind everyone, I know that all of you already know this, but to try to remind consumers that VQA equals certified 100% Ontario grown. This is so important in today's environment. People are looking for local more and more, and that is the one guarantee that they have when they see VQA on the label. It's important for wine producers and farmers in our province. And essentially, it is the most sustainable choice because it is our home, it's our home team. It's grown right here in Ontario. You can see that from the numbers on this slide. $98.20 is an added value to our economy, not to mention all of the thousands of jobs that it creates for our economy. But I guess this is true of really all Ontario VQA wine, but so much so for Gamay. In today's discussion was talked about how the value proposition is unbelievable for Gamay. It does punch higher, always punches higher, no matter what price point you start out at, in the low teens up until $30 or even $35. It's an amazing variety. So we want to make sure that we can tell that confidently to consumers, because it's something that we can really be proud of with our own wine country. So thank you again. And a final slide is just a reminder to everyone that Doug Beattie is our VQA wine ambassador, and he's always available for anyone at the LCBO to speak to about the wines in this presentation or the wineries. Please feel free to get in touch with him, ask him any questions, and he'll get you those answers. So have a wonderful harvest fall time. It's probably by the time you see this, we will be harvesting Gamay. So cheers.
Cheers. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your hard work.